Someone turned their camera on. Thank you. Love to see that. If other people were brave enough to do that, I would love it. Awesome. Thank you. It's so good to see faces. Thanks, you guys.
Patty.
I love it. So my clock says 6, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to introduce myself and say, first of all, thank you for being here. I know it is past the regular workday. I know that you guys probably have a million other things going on in your life. So the fact that you are here tonight to learn more about Purdue and learn more about pharmacy, we really, really appreciate your time. My name is Story Pedley, and I am one of the academic advisors in the College of Pharmacy. So again, welcome and thank you. And I have a couple of advisors with me, as well as a couple of current students. So as we are talking, if you guys have questions, please, you are not going to interrupt us. If you just kind of wave your arms, put something in the chat. We want to be sure that we are answering questions that are important to you tonight. So as we're talking, if things come up, you are not going to interrupt us. You're not going to upset us if you just kind of jump in and say something, because that's why we're here. We want to make sure we're talking about what's important to you. So if I could ask the two advisors that are with me to introduce themselves, and then we'll have the students introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Eberhard. I'm one of the academic advisors in the College of Pharmacy. I also help oversee our living learning community. So for any of you that are admitted into learning community, you would be working pretty closely with me during the year.
My name is Brenda Schroeder. I'm also one of the academic advisors, and I too am really appreciative of seeing all your faces on here tonight. Thank you.
So like I said, I also have 3 current students with me tonight. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. And if you guys could say your hometown, say, I don't see Abby anymore. Did she leave? Well,
here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so if you guys could say, obviously your name, your hometown, and then share with everyone why you chose Purdue and why you chose pharmacy. And I'm just going to go based on who I'm seeing on the screen first. Allison, if you want to go first, and then Cam, and then Abby.
Yeah, perfect. So my name's Allison. I am a P2 student. I'm from Brownsburg, Indiana. So it's about like
Allison,
30 minutes outside.
Can you explain what a P2 is?
Yeah, of course. Basically, so I am a second-year pharmacy student. I'm admitted in the PharmD program, and I'm completing my second year right now. And then, yeah, I'm from Brownsburg, Indiana, so that's about like 30 minutes outside of Indy. I chose Purdue because it's a really it's an excellent school. I love that it was a big school. and I could get the chance to meet a lot of different people. I specifically chose Purdue Pharmacy, actually after meeting one of these Purdue ambassadors, which is pretty funny. But she convinced me to come to Purdue Pharmacy. It's an excellent program. The professors are all fantastic, and they're one of the biggest draws that I had coming here. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Cameron, or Cam. My hometown is in Huntley, Illinois, so about an hour northwest of Chicago. I'm a P3, so I'm in my third year of pharmacy school, which would also equate to being, oh goodness, my fifth year on campus at Purdue. So I'm almost done, not quite there yet. And I chose pharmacy because I got my first job at a Walgreens and knew that in high school I wanted to do something medical. And I ended up getting my first job at the Walgreens, and it kind of just clicked once they asked me to go back into the pharmacy. And yeah, it was kind of just a too good to be true coincidence almost. And then I chose after that Purdue because I knew I wanted to go a decent distance from home while not being too far, and then at the same time kind of going somewhere that I knew I would kind of be able to see a lot of fresh faces, somewhere where not a lot of people in my high school personally were going to. And then also my aunt and uncle both went to Purdue as engineering students, and they convinced me to at least come see the campus. And then as soon as I stepped foot on campus, I absolutely loved it and knew that I didn't want to go anywhere else.
Hello, my name is Abby. I'm also a third year professional student. I'm from Robinson, Illinois, which is like an hour from Terre Haute, Indiana, if you know where that is, but Robinson's pretty much middle of nowhere. I chose Purdue, kind of similar reasons as Cam, just something different, getting away from some of the people that I'd grown up with, and then also just like walking onto campus, it just has a different feel than a lot of the other colleges that I visited, which I know is probably hard for some people here to hear because you guys can't really do the whole visiting thing. So that really stinks. So I'm really glad you guys are here seeing us this way. And then I chose pharmacy. I wanted to do medical field, and I feel like pharmacists kind of have an interesting role in like educating patients, which is something I'm really passionate about. And so they kind of get to spend a little more time with the patient and tell them why they're taking their medications, which I think makes it a lot more meaningful for the patient.
Cool. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm just going to give a little bit of information about the pharmacy program, and then I'm going to hand it back over to the ambassadors. I know you want to hear from them way more than you want to hear from me. Just to give you kind of a quick overview, the College of Pharmacy offers two majors. One is what we call BSPS. It is our Bachelor of Science in Pharmaceutical Sciences. It's our 4-year degree, and the focus of that tends to be drug discovery, drug development. So if you think you want to be the one to cure cancer, you're going to be the person that's going to cure Alzheimer's. You want to take a current drug and make it work faster, make it less expensive, make it less painful. That's going to be the program for you. It does tend to be a little more research-based. And then our other major is our 6-year pre-pharm, PharmD. So it's 2 years of pre-pharmacy coursework. You apply to pharmacy school, and then you have 4 years of the professional pharmacy school. So all 3 of the ambassadors that are here tonight, they are all in our professional program. So they are in a 6-year degree. They will graduate with a doctorate of pharmacy. And what we tend to see, and Abby touched on this a little bit, what we tend to see is the students that are drawn to pharmacy really want to help people. They want to be in healthcare, but they don't necessarily want the years and years and years of med school, or they don't necessarily want all the blood and guts that come with being a doctor. A pharmacist and the career paths of pharmacy tend to be really clean. You don't even really have to touch people all that often as a pharmacist. And like Abby mentioned, you get that education component. So it's a really kind of a cool combination that allows you to be part of that healthcare team, but you're not going to get that 2 a.m. emergency phone call nearly as often. So that tends to be what draws students to pharmacy. As I'm talking and as the ambassadors are talking, please take advantage of the chat. We've got 2 advisors here with me that can be monitoring that, answering questions, sharing links, and sharing resources with you guys. And again, if you have questions, put them there or just unmute and interrupt us, and that's just fine too. If I could ask you guys to, or the ambassadors, maybe talk a little bit about what classes you're taking right now, what you find to be your favorite, maybe what you find to be your least favorite, and talk about a little bit of the academic component. And we can just go in the same order every time, have Allison and then Cam and then Abby.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Okay, so I'm actually taking 2 classes right now that I'm really excited with. They're both outside of the typical like pharmacy curriculum, but there are pharmacy electives that we get to take. So one of them is a class called like underserved and vulnerable populations. So it's a really interesting class. I'm very interested in like public health and serving the underserved. So it's a really interesting class where we get to actually go to a lot of family health clinics in the Lafayette area. And we get to shadow pharmacists who work there. So they work in these clinics. They are under collaborative practice agreements, which means that they actually get to prescribe in certain areas to the patients that they're with. And that's something that I'm really interested in. So I'm excited for that class to get to learn about that. And then the other class that I am really excited about is called Public Health Pharmacy. And we actually get to work with contact tracing this year. So obviously, I'm sure you guys have all heard about that in the past year, what contact tracing is. So it's actually really cool. We get certified in contact tracing and we get to actually participate in that with the Purdue students. So I'm really excited for that and just to learn a little bit more about how like pharmacy students and pharmacists can impact like the grander scheme of public health.
Cam, do you want to talk a little bit about your classes?
Yeah, sorry, I'm reading the chat box. So I guess I'll talk about just the main pharmacist class for a second when it comes to what everyone in our world thinks of when we normally talk about a class, and that is therapeutics. So therapeutics is really going to expose pharmacy students to the main part of what you learn as a pharmacist, being all the different disease states. So last semester, most of it was between oncology and then things like reflux disease and pain and all sorts of things like that. And then currently, all of this semester, my therapeutics class is teaching us infectious diseases and all the different antibiotics and antivirals and things like that. And then of course, all the drugs that go with it and the side effects from the drugs and the drug interactions and everything that you can think about a drug, you name it. This is the class that it gets discussed in. And the class that I honestly also enjoy the most, just because this is definitely the meat and potatoes of what pharmacy school is. And then also the other class that I would like to talk about that I am currently in. I actually haven't had it yet, but it's coming up on Friday, so I'm really excited. Is my emergency medicine class. And so emergency medicine is a pretty niche area of pharmacy, but it's one of the specialties that not everyone knows that a pharmacist is involved in. But a pharmacist can play a big role when it comes to the emergency department and kind of helping physicians come up with come up on the spot with what drugs they want to give people who are potentially seriously ill, or just any other way that they can help out in the emergency department. So that is another class that I'm really looking forward to.
Okay, so Cam hit probably two of the big ones for me as well. Therapeutics is definitely a fan favorite, also the most difficult. But another one that we all take throughout the pharmacy program is professional lab, which when you say lab, you usually think of like test tubes and doing experiments and all that stuff. But this is more of a like practice-based competency thing. So we all wear professional clothes and white coats and kind of have the opportunity to go through the material that we learn in class and like actually practice applying it to like patient care and like see how that would be utilized in the real world. And sometimes we have actual people come in and pretend to be patients, and we're just evaluated on like our counseling so that we can get better at just like teaching people about their medications. And then another class that I'm in right now that I'm really excited about is a residency preparation class. So after 4 years of pharmacy school, you can do even more schooling, because who wouldn't want to, and go and be a resident somewhere and kind of specialize. So that's something that I'm looking into. And so this class kind of prepares you for the process of that.
Okay, thanks you guys. I'm seeing quite a few questions in the chat about the process, like the application process going from pre-pharm to the PharmD, kind of the numbers. So let me talk a little bit about that. And then I'd like for the students to kind of share their experience on the application process, the interview process, the pressure or lack of pressure, whatever. So just to kind of give you a breakdown of the numbers. Every year, Purdue brings in a freshman class to the College of Pharmacy of around 300 students. So of those 300, there are some that are pre-pharm and some that are our 4-year BSPS. The majority are pre-pharmacy, and then a smaller percentage will be the BSPS. Students that are interested in applying to pharmacy school start that application during the fall semester of their sophomore year. So by the time that they have been at Purdue just a year, they're starting that application process. So we bring in 300 freshmen. By the time that application process starts, we get around 200 applicants to pharmacy school. Some are BSPS and have no intention of applying to pharmacy school. Some of them maybe failed freshman chemistry and they decided this may not be the best career path for me. So lots of different reasons why, but around 200 apply from Purdue pre-pharm every year. And then we get around 400 to 500 applications every year to our College of Pharmacy. So 200 from Purdue, and then 200 to 300 from a regional campus, or they're doing their pre-pharmacy at a community college, or they did their pre-pharmacy coursework out in California and are applying to our pharmacy school. So we bring in a freshman, or not a freshman class, a P1 class every year of 150 students. So 400 to 500 applications for a class size of 150. We interview around 250. So one of the main reasons that students are not successful in gaining admission is GPA. That tends to be the biggest reason. On average, students in our pharmacy program have between a 3.4 and a 3.6 GPA. However, I don't love focusing on the numbers because it truly is a holistic application process. And what I mean by that is we do not expect perfection. If you know that you're going to have a weakness, maybe it's GPA, maybe it's shadowing, maybe it's leadership. If you have a weakness, knock it out of the park in all of the other areas, and that is going to help your application. So every year we have students with a 4.0 that don't get admitted because they think, well, I have a 4.0. I don't have to worry about letters of rec. I don't have to worry about shadowing. They're going to admit me because I have a 4.0. No. And on the flip side of that, every year we will have students with around a 2.8 that do get admitted because they knocked it out of the park in every other area and their GPA was their weakness. So it really is a holistic approach. Human eyes are looking at every application. We are not just spitting it into a computer and a yes or no pops out. We are looking at what classes did you take? We are reading your essays. We're reading your letters of rec. All of that matters, and all of that comes together to be your whole picture for the application. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about your pre-pharmacy application process, kind of what worked for you, what was helpful?
Yes. Okay. So I'll just talk about the application. Someone else can maybe talk about the interviews, those kinds of things. Mrs. Pedley kind of touched on it a little bit, talking about like shadowing, leadership, volunteer, that kind of stuff. So one of the things that Purdue Pharmacy does really well is they have this thing called like the puzzle pieces. And it kind of shows you what the things they're looking for on your application when you're trying to get into the pharmacy, into like pharmacy school. So there's GPA, volunteer experience, leadership experience, shadowing, and then just like general work experience, can be pharmacy or non-pharmacy related. And so that was really helpful for me as someone who's a like freshman in college trying to figure out how I'm gonna get into pharmacy school, is I could see all those puzzle pieces laid out really easily. And so I'm like, okay, I know I need to hit each of those. I thought that was also really helpful just for getting involved at school. Myself personally, I'm a bit shy. And so I, especially like going into my freshman year of college, I was like pretty nervous to go do new things. So that was like a big motivator of like, hey, like if I'm going to get into pharmacy school, I actually need to go do some things by myself and get involved in things that I actually want to get involved with. So I thought that was really excellent. From there, yeah, the application I think opened fall, and it's due at the end of like that fall semester of sophomore year. The application itself did not feel overwhelming. I did it in chunks. And like I said, if you hit all those puzzle pieces, you feel, once you're filling it out, you kind of like, you feel pretty accomplished. Like, okay, like I feel like I have a good shot because I did what they asked me to do. So I think that was kind of like my whole experience. I didn't feel like I was a shoo-in or anything like crazy, but I was like, I feel confident in what I did, that like I tried my very best to get to where I'm hopeful that I can get into this program. So.
Yeah, and Cameron, before you, I just want to jump in real quick. The application process is going to be very similar to what you did to be a competitive applicant for Purdue. The additional component will be like what Allison mentioned. We do ask that you have some shadowing hours, shadowing specifically a pharmacist. And what we think is pretty cool is you can use any and all of your high school experiences in your pharmacy school application. We don't want it all to be high school. We hope that you're building on whatever cool stuff you're doing now, that you build on that when you get to Purdue, but do not feel like you have to start over with all of this stuff when you're at Purdue. So just continue to do volunteer work, continue with your leadership, and then also use your high school stuff when you're filling out the application. Okay, Cam, go ahead.
Yeah, so to kind of just keep going from what Allison was talking about with the application, and also to try to directly address some of the questions that I've been reading in the chat box. In terms of stress that comes along with the application and getting into the professional PharmD program, Purdue does a really good job. Like if you do your pre-pharm at Purdue, they do a fantastic job of kind of guiding you through the steps and what you need to do. So everything that Allison and Mrs. Pedley have been talking about, from leadership, shadowing, work experience, academics, all of it. So great example, Mrs. Pedley was my advisor. She's been my advisor ever since I've been here as a freshman. And so I would meet with her before I got into pharmacy school, and she'd say, all right, what do you got? What for leadership experience? What do you got for shadowing? What do you got for work experience? And then I was like, oh, I don't have that many shadowing experiences right now. She's all right, well, let's get on that. Let's find you some shadowing experiences and let's do it. And I think the biggest point to make about that is the reason that they're doing that isn't to kind of just for you to have another box to check. It's really to make sure that pharmacy is what you want to do, because I think the best way to be able to find that out is by shadowing someone, to watch what they do on a day-to-day basis and to kind of be that person's shadow for a day, because that's when you're really going to find out whether or not you like it. And if you do end up getting in pharmacy school and then you end up hating it, well, that's a lot of money wasted and it's a lot of time wasted. So that's really the main reason why they do things like that. And then the other thing that I wanted to address quickly, in terms of support when it comes to pre-pharmacy. So like I mentioned, all the advisors are there. Each pre-pharmacy student has an advisor that they can talk to when it comes to the pharmacy application or anything else in general, life issues that will of course come up for everyone, you name it. And then also there are of course plenty of study groups on campus that you can find. There's a bunch of friends that you're going to make no matter what you do. When it comes to, I don't know if you guys know what this is, but the Bully or Gold Rush will, it's something that you do, the very first thing you would do as a freshman, most likely, and it can allow you to foster some really great relationships right away. And then also clubs. So as a part of Pharmacy Ambassadors, and I'm sure Abby can talk about this a little bit more, but we help students that are applying into the pharmacy program by doing mock interviews and things like that. So there are plenty of facets for you to get the help you need. But in college, also keep in mind that it really is up to the student to kind of go out and seek these opportunities on their own. Because it's definitely a different ball game from high school. Not everything is kind of just handed to you, but there are definitely the resources that are there if you know where to find them and how to use them.
Thanks, Cam. Abby, when you do your part, whenever you're answering this part, I saw in the chat someone had asked about examples of leadership. If you don't mind just kind of sharing what you have done in the past and maybe what you're involved in terms of leadership.
Yeah, I'll just start with that. So for leadership, I thought sounded super intimidating, like walking in and you're like, I'm a freshman and now I'm supposed to have leadership for my first semester, my sophomore year. Like that sounds super crazy. So for me, a big thing was I became an RA, which is not something that everyone gets to do for sure, but has been a really awesome process that I have grown in leadership a ton through. So that's a resident assistant. It means that I'm in charge of like a floor in a residence hall on campus. So, and you know that they've trained me not to say dorm now. And so that was really awesome. Another thing I got involved in was pharmacy ambassadors. I was in a couple other pre-pharmacy club. And I just think a big thing to me was that like leadership didn't always mean having like the title of like vice president or president or secretary. Like you can lead in like other ways. So like something for me that I had done over the summer between my freshman and sophomore year was lead like a small group at my church at home of middle schoolers. And so that was a big thing that I could speak to, and like that's still leadership. So it doesn't have to be like the traditional role of leadership, I would say. And then the other thing I was going to hit on for the process would be the interview. So as Cam said, this is kind of something that I love. I'm the professional development chair for Pharmacy Ambassadors, which means every year I organize an application review for the second year pharmacy students on campus. And I try to get to the people who are at other schools if I can, but that's not always super easy to do since we don't know who else coming. But you'll be paired with a professional student. They'll look over your application, say, this is how your essay could be better. This is how your application could look better if you listed them in this order, or if you change this bullet point to have a better action verb, or like anything like that. Just people who have been through it. And then the interview happens in February. So that is you and 2 faculty members, sometimes in person, this year online, obviously. So, but you walk in and you know one of the faculty members' names before you get there. I think still, is that still the same? Okay, we don't know. It used to be like that. You know at least one of the people interviewing you. There's some changes since I'm getting a little old in this program now. So you walk in and it's more like a conversation than an interview, and you just kind of get to speak to your experiences, and you walk in and they don't know anything about you for the most part. So they just know your name and they're like, she's coming for an interview at this time. So like, they don't know your GPA if that's like not your strongest part, or they don't know, oh, well, you didn't find like a traditional leadership role. So you just don't talk about those things. Like in my interview, I talked about dogs. So that's kind of a picture, I feel like, of a lot of people that I know. Their interview is not always super traditional. But I also do the mock interview process. So we're actually working on that right now for our pre-pharmacy students. And we're providing, I think, 80 mock interviews for the pre-pharmacy students this year, which is way more than I've ever done. So that'll be next week and it'll be really exciting. And we just kind of go through questions that we've heard a lot of people have had in their interview and just kind of give people some ease about what they usually are asked in the interview.
Thanks. Are there some questions in the chat that you guys are seeing more often that maybe you think I should talk about, or that the students should talk about?
One question I thought was a good one that comes up is how do you compare Purdue as a big university, small university? What's your take on the size of campus, and what are some of the resources and things that you've used on campus? I think would be great.
Okay, do you guys want to address those?
Sure. I could talk about like size of campus. Purdue is definitely a big school for sure. And like physical size of campus is large as well. There can be like pretty long walks between classes, but I will say campus is laid out pretty interestingly. So like one half of campus is kind of like residential, where all of the dorms are, and then the other half is like academic campus, where all your classes will be, which is kind of nice, just with mapping things out, making sure you know where you're going. One of the things, I would be surprised if you guys have heard this as well, but I remember my mom telling me you can make a big school feel small, but not a small school feel big. And that is like so silly and cliche, but it's very true. It like as you go on your walks to and from class, you end up seeing the same people, whether you know them or not, which just makes things feel smaller and more familiar. I definitely remember when I was committing to come here, I was like, oh man, it's a little big, like there's gonna be a lot of people here, but it really is not too overwhelming when you're there. And then sports ends up being a lot of fun because it is a big school, so there's a lot of people at events. Fingers crossed will come back. So I think that is I don't know, kind of like my take on the size. It is large, but you can make it feel a lot smaller than it really is. It's very manageable.
Yeah, I think, Allison, that's a really good point. Purdue itself is big, pharmacy is small. And the students call it the pharmacy family. So you really get to know your class very well. Each class is only 150 students. So then you also get to know the other classes when you're joining clubs, when you're getting involved in leadership activities. And kind of the nice thing about it being about Purdue being big is if you were to change your mind about pharmacy, it's very easy to find another major that makes just as much sense for you, and you don't have to leave Purdue. We have so many majors here that if pharmacy ends up being not your career, which is fine, lots of other opportunities to look at other career paths.
Yeah, and I guess I'll kind of address the other part of this question, which is what makes Purdue's pharmacy school kind of different from other schools' pharmacy programs. And I'd say there's a few big things that come to mind when thinking about that. The first one being is that there's no entrance exam. I forgot the name is called because it's
PCAT.
yeah, that's what it is. So there's no PCAT, and I think that's really good because, like we've kind of been talking about already, being a pharmacist is not all about the academics. It's not about whether you have the ability to pass a test one time and then call it there. It's much more holistic than that, in the sense of the way I like to put it is you can know everything in the world. You can know all the equations, all the drugs, all the medications that a pharmacist needs to know, but unless you can tell that to your patient or to the nurse that you're working with in a way that's professional and accurate, obviously, but more so professional and respectable, then a lot of the times all that knowledge in your head is going to be meaningless. So really, I think that not requiring the PCAT is it's a pretty good thing that Purdue has going for it. And then one of the other things is that Purdue's not direct admit. So when you get into Purdue as a freshman, you're not automatically into the pharmacy school program like we've been discussing. You have to reapply for it when you're a sophomore. And I feel like that's beneficial for a student just because it kind of keeps the student on their toes. It doesn't make them complacent. It makes sure that they're learning what they have to learn, and they're not just going to be like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I could push that off because I'll be in pharmacy school anyway. It kind of still, it lets them keep that drive of them wanting to do well. And then my last reason as to why Purdue is pretty unique is that it's a 6-year program instead of an 8-year program. So, and by doing this, so it's 2 years undergrad, apply the second year, and then 4 years of pharmacy school. In doing this, we essentially shave off 2 years. So that's saving a lot of money, which is 2 thumbs up for me. But with that being said, it does make those first 2 years a little bit more of a crunch. It makes some of the classes hard. I saw a question in the chat box from earlier asking, what is the hardest class? And to be honest with you, I can't pick out a single one because a lot of them truthfully are difficult. They're meant to be difficult. But that's because they're teaching a lot of material in the 2 years to kind of save you some time and money. But I feel like that's a really big advantage for Purdue. And if you're willing to put the time in, then it can be extremely beneficial for you.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw out there what I think sets Purdue apart and makes us a unique pharmacy program. In addition to everything that Cam shared, we offer a nuclear pharmacy certification. So for Cameron, are you doing that?
Yeah, I'm still in that too.
Okay. For no additional fee, there is a series of courses that students take during their professional years that leads them to sit for the nuclear pharmacy certification. We are one of only 4 or 5 pharmacy schools that offer that option. So that is super cool. We encourage our students to pursue those additional classes, and it does not add extra time, very easily done during your professional years. The benefit of that is you have this additional skill set that the majority of your peers will not have when you're applying for a job, an internship, graduate programs, residencies. So it's this extra skill set that sets you apart. And if you never use it, okay. But if you do use it, let's say 5 years down the road, if you did not pursue nuclear pharmacy, 5 years down the road, you decide, that nuclear pharmacy thing, that sounds kind of cool. I want to look into that more. You would now have to go back to school, pay thousands of dollars to do those additional classes when they're being offered right at your fingertips at Purdue for free while you're, well, not for free. I mean, it's part of your tuition, but no additional fee to take those courses. And then one other thing that I feel sets Purdue apart is we have a retail pharmacy right in our building. And that pharmacy is for students, faculty, staff, and the community. So students during their first year in pharmacy school have to work in that pharmacy. And they learn the back of the house. So they're learning about inventory, they're learning about medication safety, they learn the top 100 drugs. And then they also have to learn the front of the house. So they are talking to patients, they're talking to physicians, they're talking to insurance companies. So just a great experience all around. And we do not expect anybody to have any type of pharmacy experience prior to applying. We do not expect that you have worked in a pharmacy, that you've worked as a pharmacy tech. We will teach you everything that you need to know, and not having that does not work against you. And if you have it, that's great. But if you don't have it, that's great too. So sorry, Abby, go ahead and share your thoughts on resources.
That's okay. I actually want to really emphasize what Mrs. Pedley just said. I knew tons of people like Cam in my pharmacy class who had pharmacy experience walking in, and I was like, oh no, like I'm going to Purdue Pharmacy and I don't know anything. Like, can I even count pills? I don't know today. And so like, it's really like a learning environment, and they're very kind, and like they make it super easy to like learn it. And if you have extra questions, they'll meet with you outside of class and things like that. So you really do not have to have any pharmacy experience walking in. One question that I've seen a couple times, I think, people asking about the environment of like pre-pharmacy, since it's not auto admit, that I kind of wanted to hit on, since I thought Cam and Allison got everything else, is that it is like a little, I would say a little competitive, and it's always going to be a little competitive when you're in the program. When you're not in the program yet, people will make group me's, and then they're like, I got this on the exam, like, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got way lower than that on that exam, and like, that's okay. And like, just don't tell other people what you got on exams. That's my soapbox for the day. But I think that for the most part, it's a very like helpful and like collaborative environment. There's lots of ways to get help. There's lots of professional students that want to help pre-pharmacy students. There's lots of resources like the math help room, or the chemistry class that we took used to have a help room. I'm assuming they still do. There's office hours, and like all those things you can utilize and like definitely get support from not only other students, but from the professors, which is really big, especially as you're trying to figure out who's going to write your letter of recommendation for you to get into pharmacy school. So definitely would recommend those. And then I saw the question Cam kind of addressed, the hardest class. I think the hardest classes were anatomy or microbiology, probably in pre-pharm, but I would also say those classes are the most representative of what I take now in pharmacy school, as far as like the amount of content. So I think that they are difficult, and you don't have to get an A in them, which is super awesome. And they kind of set you up for success if you put in enough work during them in pre-pharmacy.
Are there other questions, either Mrs. Eberhard or Mrs. Schroeder, that you think we need to be addressing?
There was one
There are
that
so many questions in the chat. This is great. It's so wonderful. I'm so glad you guys are asking questions. I know Mrs. Everhart are like, how are we going to keep up with all these? And we're trying to save some for the students as well. So I apologize. I know we may not get to all of these questions, and I'm sure Mrs. Pedley will mention this at the end, but if we don't answer your question tonight, we'll share our contact information. You'll be able to reach out to us. I don't want anyone to panic if we haven't addressed your question. Couple things I think would be helpful that I saw, and Mrs. Everhart, you jump into, certainly talking about either dual degree programs or finding a balance between school, job, social life.
The one that I thought might be good for them to talk about, since Cameron and Abby just went through this, would be talking about rotations, what kinds of rotations you guys get placed in, where those rotations take place. Since you guys, I think you finished that process, right, for next year? Okay, I didn't want to like toss you in there when you're still in the midst of it. So if you guys wanted to talk about that, or if we have time to get to that, I think that would be good since it's fresh.
Yeah, so before you guys answer about the rotations, let me just kind of give you a background on what rotations are. So during your 4th year of pharmacy school, you are not in the classroom. You are out doing rotations. So it is 10 4-week rotations, and the majority of them are in Indiana, but we also offer rotations in Kenya, in Colombia, in Britain, and I know this isn't international, but in Alaska. So students that are maybe interested in some type of a study abroad experience, that would be an option. So if you guys want to talk a little bit about that process.
Cam, I'm going first, sorry. So we are kind of preparing for this right now. We just finished ranking all of our rotations, which is kind of a stressful process because you like go in and there's like hundreds of rotations listed and you just have to like be like, I have no idea how I would choose these. But something that I wanted to hit on was that there are like different ways that you can go and different tracks that you can take in your 4th year. So there's like 3 main like track programs that you can do, which means you just have multiple rotations in the same place. One of those is like a hospital track, which means you do about 5 or 6 months at the same hospital. And that's for people who want to do hospital pharmacy, like residency, things like that. There's an industry track, which would be 2 or 3 months at like an industry company. I saw someone just asked about the FDA. I think the FDA just does a 1-month rotation that you apply for, but there's also like Eli Lilly does a track, and then a lot of the other pharmacy companies that escape me because I am not terribly familiar with them. And then the third one is an ambulatory care track, which is more patient focused kind of, and it's like 2 to 3 months at like a hospital or a clinic, and you get to see patients every day and kind of do like usually like diabetes care or anticoagulation care, things like that, with a pharmacist. So in your 4th year, you'll do 10 1-month rotations, and everyone gets 1 month off during the year, and everyone gets the month of December off for Christmas that year. I think that is all I wanted to say. I'll let Cam take the rest of it.
Sure. So I guess to talk about rotations on sort of a little bit of a broader scale. So like Mrs. Pedley said, our 4th year, we have to do 10 different clinical rotations, and then there are some requirements to them. So for example, like one of them has to be at a community pharmacy. So that would be something like a Walgreens, a CVS, Kroger, you name it, something like that. And then one of them has to be in a hospital, but more of like the kind of the operation side of things, so we can have a better idea of how exactly a pharmacy operates in a hospital. And then 2 of them have to be some sort of inpatient, where we're dealing with patients that are in the hospital for whatever reason, and kind of just all encompassing, not necessarily like a specific area. And then the other 2 are ambulatory care, and ambulatory care is more of like a clinical setting where we go. It's what you would think of if you had an appointment with your doctor at the doctor's office. You kind of go in to the office and you kind of chat with the pharmacist, and you just chat about your medications, how things are going with them, if there's any sort of test you have to run for someone who has diabetes, let's say, and then say they're not doing so well, then we'll work with them to kind of adjust their medications and kind of get them on a better track and kind of see what works for them better and so on. Yeah, and then
Sorry to
within,
interrupt.
yeah, go ahead.
But you're talking a lot about rotations, and they said, and didn't seem very important. But this I never use context clues. But what are rotations exactly again?
Yeah, exactly. So rotations are, they're going to be for Purdue, they could differ from school to school, so keep that in mind. But for Purdue, rotations are going to be where you're essentially going to be unpaid clinical intern for 4 months, not 4 months, for 4 weeks somewhere. So whether that's at a community pharmacy like a CVS, or in a hospital somewhere, or like in an ambulatory care site like I was just talking about, and you're there to learn essentially on the job. You have a preceptor, which is a pharmacist that will kind of be there for you and help you learn, and kind of they'll be there to show you the ropes. And then yeah, you're essentially just learning on the job and not necessarily in the classroom. You're applying the knowledge that you have learned in the classroom into the real world, and kind of just building on top of it. And then with those rotations, there are multitudes and multitudes. I can talk about all the different opportunities for rotations for the rest of our time, which I'm not going to do. So I will just end my spiel there.
We've also had several questions again about the learning community. And I know since a lot of students are trying to make those decisions about learning communities, maybe Mrs. Eberhardt or some of the students who may have been a part of the learning community can talk about some of the benefits of that.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So what the Living Learning Community is, it's essentially, it's a group of students. It could either be that they are grouped together based on their major or based on an interest that they have. So the one that we have obviously is based on your major. So our learning community is only open to pre-pharmacy students or pharmaceutical sciences students. We have about 60 to 70 students in our learning community. This year we are housed in Owen Hall. So that may be a change for some of you who may have been in it before. It's really nice because it's right next to the dining hall. So you don't have to walk very far to get there. Normally what we do is we offer basically supplemental opportunities for those students. So in non-COVID times, we did weekly floor dinners. Students got a chance to interact with fourth-year professional students who are on academic rotations here on campus. And as well as we have speakers who come and speak to students, and we've done compounding events to give students a little bit of hands-on activity. So you get to compound either a hand cream or hand sanitizer. You get to learn basically how do you interpret a prescription that's sent to you from a doctor's office, and how do you pack that stuff in the little jar and all that. I am not good at it, but I figure give me enough time, I'll get there. But those are just some of the advantages. Obviously, you're with a bunch of students who are taking the same classes, so that makes it really conducive to studying together. Our students do tend to do study tables quite frequently in the halls. So that is the basic general overview. But Abby, do you want to speak from the student side?
Yeah, so I did the learning community. It was interesting that you have like an RA who's also in pharmacy, which is really cool. But like when you're a freshman, I don't think realize the complete weight of like how helpful that is. So like my RA, my first year was a P3 in pharmacy school. So she had like a ton of information that she could just like give to us in a group meeting, which was like, oh, like this is how you should sign up for classes or things like that, just about like things that she had learned over her time at Purdue, which was really interesting. And then like Megan said, we do like events. The compounding event was super fun if they get to go back to doing that. And then the studying was also super awesome. You have like a floor group me on most, like in most residence halls. And so like if you were like, oh, I need help on number 8 on the calc homework, literally someone would come to your door in like minutes and you'd just be like, I know how to do that problem because I already finished my homework. And then you just got help that way, and it was really cool. Or like studying in lobbies all together was always helpful, and you could like bounce ideas off each other that way.
One really kind of cool story that I've heard about living and learning communities is, let's say, for example, there is an exam at 7:30 Friday morning, and everybody lives on the same floor, so everybody's getting ready to go to the exam, and you look around and go, oh, where's Susie? Susie slept through her alarm. You go knock on her door and get Susie up out of bed and get her to the exam on time. So it's a group of like-minded, same goals students. You're taking the same classes, you're studying together, you're supporting each other. It's not for everybody. There are some students that think, I do not want to spend any more time with pharmacy people than I need to, and they go have non-pharmacy friends. That's great too. It truly is personal preference and what makes the most sense for you. I see that we only have about 7 minutes left, so I want to make sure that you guys know there is an email address that was probably part of the announcement that you got about this event tonight. It's farmlife@purdue.edu, PHARMLIFE@purdue.edu. That email goes to me, but what I can do is if your questions did not get answered tonight, I will answer those, or I can also farm them out to the ambassadors and they can then answer those questions from their perspective. You'll then have a connection to a current student. So please don't feel like we're ignoring you if we're not able to get to your question tonight. There are over 50 people here tonight, which is amazing and makes me so happy. But I don't like leaving with you guys feeling like you didn't get to talk about what was important. So please reach out to that email address or give us a call, and we can set up a private Zoom call with you and your family to get additional questions answered. I think I'm going to ask, just in the 6 minutes that we have left, if each ambassador, if you guys could just share words of wisdom. What do you wish you knew in high school that nobody told you, or something that would be helpful to these guys that are here in the audience tonight? Some just kind of final parting words.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to think of something that would be meaningful and helpful. Honestly, I think my biggest piece of advice, no matter whether you guys choose to come to Purdue or elsewhere, is just to get involved. I think, like I might talk about that earlier, about that being really scary, like for myself in particular, and I think it can be scary for a lot of people, but that has by far made the college experience like way better. I have gotten to meet so many people outside of my pharmacy class, and made a lot of like amazing lifelong friends just from getting involved in different organizations. So I just think, obviously, if pharmacy is something you think you're passionate about, get involved in pharmacy things, but also find things outside of pharmacy that you're passionate about as well. Pharmacy is not life. School is not life. And so I think just keep that in mind. Once you're leaving high school, it's like, hey, like school is not about to become everything. And I hope it doesn't. I hope you find so many other things that you want to be involved with and want to spend your time doing outside of school. So I think, yeah, that'd be my biggest piece of advice. Get involved, find some fun things to do, and it'll surely be great.
Right. For me, I would say the biggest piece of advice would be, and this is kind of addressing one of the questions that I saw earlier as well, to just, when it comes to trying to balance academics and social life, kind of, no one's going to be able to tell you what the best thing to do for that is, because really everyone's different when it comes to finding the best balance. I've found, and everyone's going to have their own way of finding it. I think really freshman year is what really drove that home for me, because in high school I was very good at school, which breeded some very, very bad habits when it came to academics in high school. And Mrs. Fedley really likes when I tell the story of my very first calc class here at Purdue, because I I bombed that first test really good. I got like straight up a 30% on it because I was just like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't need to study. I know what I'm doing. And then Purdue calculus said, no, you don't know what you're doing. And so it really made me go back and realize that I kind of need to resituate myself and kind of figure things out for myself, because unlike high school, um, college kind of doesn't have a lot of direction in the sense of telling you exactly what you need to do for this class on this day, and um, and you'll know what you have to. It's more like the exams on this day, do you got to do in order for you to learn the material by then. And there are tons of resources there for you to succeed, but it's a lot more up to you and being self-sufficient. And um, I wish someone really told me that that things aren't really just going to be come to you. No one's going to really give out their hand unless you have the courage to ask for it. So don't be afraid to go ask for help, and don't be afraid to really reach out. And then also, um, don't be afraid to kind of try different things, try different study habits, try different um, timelines when it comes to maybe studying versus um, when you're going to interact socially or things like that, because everyone's different. Not everyone's going to be able to um, cope or deal with things the same way. So just really find what works for you best.
And the upside of that story is Cameron was able to get his grade up in his calc class.
Oh yeah.
He still got into pharmacy school, and it wasn't a deal breaker, and it was not the end of the world.
Yes.
Okay, Abby, wise words from you.
I think just kind of springboarding off something Cameron said, just like don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that you kind of come into college and you're like afraid of professors, afraid of students that are older than you. And like now looking back, it's like they probably would have said yes. And like honestly, the worst thing they can say is no, and nothing changes. So like ask the professor if they have extra time outside of office hours to meet with you, or ask the professional student to help you with your application, or even with just like an assignment for another class. Like we want to help the students that are younger than us, and we like really care for you guys just because we have been there and we know how stressful it can be. So that would be my biggest takeaway. I guess I wanted to do research whenever I was in pre-pharmacy. And so my advisor gave me this advice, and she's like, well, the worst they can do is say no. And so I emailed like 30 professors. That might be an exaggeration, at least 20 professors though, and said, can I do research in your lab? I have no experience and I think it would be super cool. And I had 2 respond. One of them was a no, but the other one was a yes. So, I mean, worst case, they just don't respond, and that's okay. And you still end up succeeding anyway. So
Awesome.
I can I
All
chime
so
in
much.
just real
Oh,
quick?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Since they talked about being interested, I know we're a little over time, interested in helping the younger class, you guys probably, if you come to Purdue, you'll get communications from our colleague, Ms. Marie Martin Murphy. She has a peer mentor program. So if you're interested in being paired with an upper class student to mentor you, that is another program that we offer that students really, really enjoy.
Great. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Again, please reach out to us to get any questions answered that we were not able to touch on tonight. I do apologize. I had no clue that we would have so many amazing questions. So thank you all for your attention and your time. And we so appreciate you spending this hour with us. Awesome. Thanks, you guys. It was so,
Wow, I can't believe how many people there were.
I don't know how you
That
guys
was
were
a
able to
good
keep up with
turnout.
those questions.
So
That was
many
crazy.
questions.
I don't think we did. I
I
don't
don't
think
think we did. I
It was a
messaged
lot.
Brenda directly. I was like, how are we dividing these? I don't even know.
Yeah, we didn't have a good, and some of them just seem so, that really having the students, having you guys answer
Mhm.
makes sense. And so I was like, well, I don't know if I want to answer that because this is going to be a really
Yeah.
good opportunity for the students to share. So yeah, that was a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a good
I mean,
one, a good
a
challenge.
good problem.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah.
Good one.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.